Hey everyone, so glad you're here on my channel. Today I've got another gripping story for you. Get comfortable. Let's dive in. The dining room glowed with reflected light from gold and silver decorations. A loud, sharp laugh cut through the conversation. I saw a thick packet shoved toward my sister Blair and watched her hand shake as she took it. People gasped, then cheered. I heard cabin and $415,000 mentioned. The words hung in the air. My drink sat forgotten. Then a second envelope, thin and standard white, landed in front of me. All sound in the room vanished. Everyone looked my way. Open it now, someone encouraged, gently. I did. The paper made a slight sound. Whatever I read first made her confident smile disappear instantly. I learned how things worked in our house when I was only 9. Compliments always flowed toward one person. They went straight to my sister, constant and generous, leaving little space for anyone else. She always had perfect report cards, awards, and plaques. I usually came home with sketches done on school paper. My mother would give my art a quick smile, then put it down to focus on framing her achievements. My father called me dependable, a word people use when they can't think of anything remarkable. During family meals, my sister's anecdotes dominated the conversation. If I started a story, it rarely got past the introduction. I got used to slicing my dinner silently, waiting for a break and talking that never arrived. When my sister enrolled in college, we had a week of celebration. When I passed my state nursing board exam, my mother just said, "That's sweet, darling," without lifting her eyes from her cell phone. This wasn't actual meanness. It was just how we operated, a learned routine. We all played roles. My role was being the silent observer. Holiday gatherings always followed the same structure. She would walk in and everyone stood up, the entire room centering around her energy. She once remarked that I was so composed, it was like I wasn't even there. I offered a laugh because that was the correct response. In pictures, I was always placed slightly to the side, mostly unseen. The difference between us became more pronounced over time. When my sister announced her engagement, I helped her select everything, the gown, the floral arrangements, the music list. When my partner and I announced ours, she started crying in the restroom. My mother followed her, shutting the door behind them. I recall looking down at the gravy hardening on my plate. I heard faint weeping and reassuring murmurs that weren't meant for me. Later, Mom put her hand on my back. "We should keep your wedding small, honey, just to maintain the peace." Peaceful. That term felt heavy. It meant silence. It meant do not provoke her reaction. After that, I gave up on trying to add my own voice to spaces already reserved. I worked hard, saved money, and developed my own predictable life. My breathing counted, folding laundry counted, silence counted. When people asked about my family, I simply said we were close. That was easier than trying to explain. The emotional distance measured in tone rather than miles. The last time I visited before that Christmas, I brought over cookies I had baked in the hospital kitchen. My sister Blair claimed she couldn't eat sugar that week because she was on a cleanse. My mother took the cookies anyway and put them next to a fruitcake my sister enjoyed but hadn't touched. I thought the table looked like a display case of things she might eventually want. That night, lying in my small apartment above the Asian restaurant, I listened to the pots clanging and the oil sizzling below. I counted my inhales until the ceiling stopped shaking. The air smelled like sesame oil and cleaning supplies mixed together. That's when I understood the truth. My quiet nature wasn't patience, it was practice. Every skipped thought, every sentence I didn't finish had been preparation for something bigger. I just didn't know yet what I would need it for. By the following winter, the family routine was locked in place. Every trip back home started the same way. My sister's loud laugh echoing down the hall before she even stepped inside. My mom's favorite perfume was already on her coat. My dad would hurry to open the wine. My own arrival was much quieter. My coat hung by the door and my hello vanished into whatever chat was already happening. My sister Blair would talk nonstop about her political work, her clients, and her new office space. Dad always called her our champion. When I briefly mentioned a patient who had woken up after being in a long coma, Mom gave a polite smile and reached for the salt shaker. I had learned to quantify affection by measuring eye contact. 3 seconds felt like a miracle. 5 seconds meant someone actually remembered I was there. When she and her partner, Drew, announced they were trying to have a baby, the entire house turned into a shrine of desperate hope. There were ultrasound pictures used as refrigerator, magnets, charts tracking her fertility cycle, and candles meant to restore cosmic balance. Every single conversation revolved around the same topics: keeping faith, praying, and waiting. I was extremely careful with my choice of words, nervous that any sign of happiness on my end might seem like I was gloating. But months turned into a couple of years, and the waiting just became intense bitterness. She began to skip family gatherings, saying she couldn't stand seeing families who were normal. Mom always rushed to defend her. She's just sensitive. I would simply nod, knowing that sensitive was our family code word for prone to causing chaos. When my partner, Luke, and I got engaged, my sister started crying again. Not just gentle tears, but full-blown, shaking sobs, and she left the dinner table right in the middle of the meal. Mom and Dad quickly followed her, leaving Luke and me with cold food and the steady hum of the fridge. "It's okay," I whispered, even though it wasn't. We planned a very small wedding, exactly how they wanted it. My sister served as maid of honor, a duty she clearly hated. She showed up an hour late to the bachelorette party, had one drink, and left. Her toast at the reception began with, "It's honestly been such a rough year for me." People still applauded. I smiled for the photographers, my eyes completely dry, gripping my flower bouquet so hard the stems were bruised. After the wedding, the imbalance just got worse. Blair began making snide comments. "You always had it easy, Maya. You just wouldn't get it easier." The word clung to me like static electricity. I wanted so badly to tell her about the exhausting double shifts, the meals I missed, the quiet, crying spells after terrible nights at the hospital. But what good would it do? Any truth that didn't focus on her problems was just considered background noise. When I found out I was pregnant 7 months later, I kept it quiet for a while. I knew exactly what kind of drama was coming, and when I finally told them, everything happened just like I'd feared. My sister's face went completely pale, then immediately turned bright red. She shouted that I was intentionally cruel, ND, that I had planned this just to hurt her. Mom sat frozen, unable to move. Dad just kept looking at his dinner plate. I stood there holding the ultrasound picture, realizing my own family would watch me be completely humiliated and still call it preserving peace. A week later, I miscarried. The house was totally silent afterward. No flowers came. My sister never called. When Mom eventually reached out to me, she repeated my sister's words as if they were deep wisdom. Maybe this was the universe, teaching me not to take things for granted. I stopped replying to her messages after that. It wasn't about anger. It was just clarity. The message was obvious. My sadness wasn't important, unless it somehow made someone else feel better. That was the point where something inside me just went quiet. This wasn't forgiveness. This was the calm that settles before a storm hits. By the next spring, we only communicated through group chats. My parents would send super cheerful texts about Sunday dinners, always attaching pictures of the neatly set table, acting as if visual proof of harmony could somehow fix our broken relationship. I always responded with easy excuses: night shift, early morning rounds, or piles of charts to finish. Some of those reasons were true. Most of them were just necessary for my own survival. When my partner and I did show up, the atmosphere felt tightly controlled. Mom would design meals to avoid any potential triggers. No talk about Bobbies, no work stories, and absolutely no jokes that might upset my sister. Luke would squeeze my hand under the table, our silent signal to stay completely still. We made it through birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays, each get-together quieter than the last one. Then Easter came around. My aunt mentioned that her daughter had just gotten engaged, and I watched it start. The tiny change in my sister's expression, the forced smile, the silence spreading over the table like something spilled. 10 minutes later, she was gone crying in the bathroom. It was the same worn-out script. The room immediately rearranged itself because of her absence. My aunt looked totally embarrassed. Her daughter's engagement announcement was instantly forgotten, erased. I met Luke's eyes. He didn't speak until we were back in the car. "This is crazy," he said. "One person gets to decide when everyone else is allowed to be happy." I didn't argue. I was just too drained. At some point, exhaustion had replaced all my anger. I just wanted distance, enough space to hear my own thoughts clearly. So we started to slowly disappear. We skipped one dinner, then another. Mom noticed. "It feels like you're punishing us," she complained over the phone. I wanted to tell her I wasn't punishing anyone. I was simply done playing my role in a play that never changed its acts. By December, our repeated absence had become a whole event in itself. Mom called 3 days before Christmas Eve, her voice shaky with manufactured hope. "Please come this year. It would mean the world to your sister." My first thought was a firm no. Then Luke quietly suggested maybe it's time to stop running away from the fighting. I wasn't sure if he meant we should fight back or get closure. Maybe both. So we agreed to go. The house looked fantastic when we arrived. Garland and candles were everywhere. It smelled like roast and cinnamon. My sister Blair greeted us with a smile that felt too forced. For the first hour, everything seemed completely scripted. She asked about my job. I asked about her new project. Mom constantly refilled the drinks. Dad laughed louder than normal. Dinner happened quickly. Then Dad stood up and cleared his voice. "We have something amazing for you two this year." Mom walked into the kitchen and came back with a huge envelope. She handed it to my sister. Everyone watched as she opened it. People gasped and clapped. I heard the word lakehouse. My sister started crying beautiful tears in the light. "It's the cabin," she whispered. "They actually bought us the cabin." Luke found my hand under the table. I managed to smile, knowing this was just the usual pattern. Then Dad said, "We also have something for you, Maya." Mom reached under the Christmas tree and got a smaller envelope, thin, plain white. She placed it in front of me with a tight, expectant smile. "Go ahead," she said. The room immediately quieted. My pulse sped up. I opened it. Inside was a folded letter written in Mom's handwriting. "Read it for everyone," Dad instructed. "We all need to hear it." I looked up. My sister's smile remained steady and confident. I took a breath, smoothed the paper, and started reading. "Dear Maya and Luke," I began. My voice stabilized quickly. "We've seen you work hard for everything, and we are proud of the adults you are." The room stayed completely silent. My sister's confident smile dropped slightly. I continued, reading. "Maya, your dedication, your strength through tough times, and the grace you showed even when we didn't show you the same taught us about real character." Mom's eyes looked wet, but it wasn't sadness. It was realization, the kind that comes too late. "Luke," I read, "you stood by her quietly and reliably. Through years of uneven treatment we now know we allowed to happen." The silence felt heavier. My sister's hand stopped, halfway to her glass. I read the next line slowly. "We know you are saving for your first home. We want to give you what we should have given you years ago." My throat felt tight. I could feel my sister watching me. "We are giving you $60,000 toward your first house," I announced, "and paying off all your remaining student loans." The atmosphere broke. My sister's face lost all color. Drew looked down at his food. Luke breathed out softly beside me, a mix of relief and surprise. "This is not a loan," I read. "It's not charity. It's recognition for the times you were treated unfairly but kept quiet for. Peace." My sister's fork clattered loudly onto her plate. I kept eating the letter. "We are tired of pretending this situation is normal. We love both our daughters, but we can't keep hurting one to make the other feel better." When I finally looked up, my sister was staring. Her face showed anger, shame, and disbelief. "You planned this," she accused, her voice low and shaking. "I didn't," I said, folding the letter. "They did?" "This is embarrassing," she snapped, standing up. "You made me look terrible in front of everyone." Dad's voice was calm and detached. "Nobody made you do anything. We just wrote the truth." My sister turned to me. "You must feel so good about getting revenge." I placed the letter down. "If this feels like revenge, maybe that says more about you than about me." Luke stood up, his voice steady. "For years you acted like her existing was a threat. That ends now." My sister's lips shook. "You don't understand. I understand everything, he corrected, and so does everyone else now. Drew spoke up, quiet, but firm. Blair, enough. Her shoulders sagged. She suddenly looked small, like she had run out of lines. Mom's voice broke the quiet. We love you, honey, but this family cannot focus only on one person's feelings anymore. My sister put her hands over her eyes. I don't know how to stop, she whispered. Dad leaned forward. Start by listening. Then the only noise was the crackling fire. I took the letter, folded it carefully, and put it on the table between us. This is not punishment, I said quietly. It's about Findy. Balance. For a moment, no one moved. Then my sister slumped back into her chair. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't fighting. The fire popped once. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and silent. No one spoke again, but the silence for the first time in years was mine. The days after Christmas passed slowly. The letter stayed on my nightstand. I never reread it, but it was proof that my quiet stance had finally been heard. My sister called a week later. Her voice sounded fragile and unfamiliar. She said she was starting therapy and Drew was helping her find someone. There was no big apology, just quietness. I told her I hoped it helped and I meant it. By spring, Luke and I bought a small house outside of town. White siding, a narrow porch, 2 rooms that smelled faintly of paint and possibility. The day we got the keys, I stood in the empty living room. I only heard my own steps, for once the space was not filled by someone else's voice. Mom and Dad visited a few weeks later. They brought a potted fern and left before dark. There were no speeches, only a quiet warmth that was enough. That night I put the letter in a drawer. I imagined the lakehouse far away, too. The water was still untouched, holding its own reflection. Maybe one day we would meet there again in a quieter version of family. For now, the world was quiet enough. I heard the fridge hum, the rhythm of my own breath, and the small sounds of a life that was finally mine. Some people think winning means being louder. It doesn't. Sometimes it's the sound of paper folding, a deep breath, or a door closing gently. That night I didn't shout, I didn't fight, I just read the facts and let them sink in. Peace does not come with clapping. It settles like snow, covering the arguments and softening the ground so you can walk ahead. If someone told you to stay quiet for peace, remember this. Silence can build walls, but it also builds strength. Thanks for reading. Tell me what moment made you stop, apologizing for being the calm one. Subscribe for more stories where justice is quiet but lasts.